Revenge with Karen. The first time I realized how disposable I was, the server room was flooding, and I was the one holding the shop vac. Not metaphorically. Literally. Some VP's cousin left a window open during a thunderstorm, said he didn't know clouds could move that fast, and water gushed in like our IPO was allergic to success. While he ran around yelling into his Apple Watch, I was ankle-deep in brown water, vacuuming around a rack of blinking vendor boxes like I was cleaning a motel bathroom. And I did it, quietly, efficiently, because that's what Karen does. I fix the messes, I renew the licenses, I catch the fires before they burn the building down, and nobody notices, until they do. And by then, it's too damn late. So before we go further, do me a solid. If you're listening and this already feels a little too familiar, maybe hit that like button, maybe subscribe. 95% of you won't. But it helps keep the lights on for folks like me who know where the real power switch lives. Anyway, back to the chaos parade. Our startup liked to pretend it was cutting edge, but really it was just nepotism in athleisure. The founder's son ran growth, but mostly spent his time posting shirtless team culture selfies from the gym. The head of finance was an aunt who still used paper checks and thought Google Docs were hacker portals. Meanwhile, I was buried under vendor renewals that no one understood, but everyone panicked over if they lapsed. Our core licensing platform? Me. Our document pipeline? Me. Even the building's HVAC contract, guess who signed off when the AC died, and we had 3 execs pass out during a quarterly review? Yours truly. But I wasn't flashy. I didn't play pickleball on Thursdays. I didn't go to whiskey tastings. Didn't do vision board Wednesdays with Lexi from Ops who once tried to staple a screenshot of her Zillow wishlist to our mission statement. I just worked. And that's where the mistake started. Because in this place, if you're not loud, you're not seen. If you're not seen, you're not rewarded. And if you're not rewarded, you're just a pair of hands to blame when the real talent messes up. I didn't even flinch when the VP of operations, man whose main skill seemed to be interrupting women mid-sentence, started forgetting to invite me to renewal meetings. I figured, fine, I'll still do the renewals, because someone has to, and when those systems go down, I'm the one who will get the Slack messages at 2 a.m. I always do. I thought maybe, doing everything right for long enough would earn me the title bump they'd hinted at. Compliance lead, they said. We just need to finalize the structure, they said. That was 6 months ago. Then one morning I opened the company newsletter, yes, a newsletter, because our HR person believed in narrative alignment, and read that my role had been expanded and realigned under new leadership. The new leader, Harper, a 27-year-old niece of the founder who once asked me if VPN stood for very private number. Harper's first Slack to me read, "Hey girl, can you bring me up to speed on the compliance thingies? I've seen feral cats with more leadership acumen, but sure, why not? Let's have the person who asked if we could fax an API lead our compliance operation." I didn't get mad, not yet. I just stopped saying yes to everything. I stopped staying late. I stopped fixing mistakes before people noticed. I became visible in a different way, by not cleaning the mess. And that's when something strange happened. I got a call from a friend at another firm, needed short-term help. Compliance renewal strategy. Quiet, clean work, no conflict of interest. They didn't even need me on site. Just a few weeks, a few contracts, a nice little bump to remind me what real respect looked like. I took the gig. Meanwhile, back at Starplandia, the chaos grew louder. Harper held team meetings that felt like Instagram lives. She sent animated GIFs in place of documentation. She still relied on the systems I built, the sign-offs I structured, the keys only I had access to. One day I came in to find a post-it note on my monitor. PLS update renewal matrix and send to legal 3H. Cute. I updated the matrix, all right. I updated a lot more than that. Because you see, while the circus was doing cartwheels, I'd been doing paperwork. Real paperwork, authorizations, signatory assignments, renewal protocols. I had the receipts. All of them. They just didn't know it yet. Harper announced her new leadership vision in a Monday morning stand-up that felt like a hostage situation at a kombucha bar. She was wearing glittery sneakers that lit up when she walked, no, really, and a t-shirt that said Boss Babe in sequins. Her speech included phrases like synergistic accountability and vibe-driven compliance, which I'm pretty sure were generated by feeding a text transcript through a malfunctioning magic 8-ball. She clapped her hands like a kindergarten teacher on Red Bull and said, "So excited to build a sparkly future with y'all." Then she looked directly at me, still clapping, and said, "Karen will totally support the transition while I get up to speed." "Right, K-Dog." That's what she called me. K-Dog, I nodded. Because what the hell else was I gonna do? Tell her I'd already done the entire compliance migration 3 months ago while she was posting inspirational quotes over beach selfies. Here's what they didn't say in that meeting. I'd written the renewal workflow playbook. I'd restructured the vendor lifecycle contracts. I'd negotiated a better licensing tier that saved us $80,000 last year. But since none of that involved a hashtag or a standing desk dance-off, it didn't count. When the founder was asked why Harper was chosen over me, his response was, "Karen's great, but she's a little analog, like a smoke alarm, like the thing that tells you you're about to burn down the whole damn house." Harper, of course, leaned into her role with all the subtlety of a bull on Adderall. She started color-coding departments with wristbands for team morale. Hit a switch to a new project tracking tool that looked like a Lisa Frank Trapper Keeper had a baby with a mood ring and scheduled 7 a.m. Alignment check-ins 3 days a week. Her definition of alignment was everyone nodding while she rambled about redefining stakeholder sparkle. And through it all, I still did the work. Quietly. Her presentations, I formatted them. The renewal alerts she kept forgetting, I chased them. System alerts she didn't know how to interpret, I handled them. She got the credit. I got the Slack pings at 11:42 p.m. that said, "OMG K-Dog, help, what does this error even mean, lol?" There's a specific kind of betrayal that doesn't slap you, it erodes you. They didn't yell. They didn't demote me. They just erased me in slow motion. Like my work was fine, just not shiny enough, not marketable, so I adjusted. I stopped pushing back. I stopped correcting Harper in meetings when she confused licensing tiers with cheer squads or called our compliance database the spreadsheet graveyard. I became invisible by design, because you can't steal what you can't see coming. That's when the message came. A former colleague, different company, bigger, smarter. They needed someone to quietly fix their renewal pipeline before the fiscal year closed. All remote, clean, separate, paid well. My heart beat faster. I didn't hesitate. I triple-checked the non-compete. No red flags. It wasn't even the same sector. Just a discreet, short-term consulting engagement that let me use my brain without explaining what a two-factor authentication token was to someone who thought compliance was an attitude issue. It felt like someone finally saw me again, not as the woman who covered everyone else's mess, but as the architect behind the curtain. I said yes. At work, nothing changed outwardly. Harper was too busy planning her Q2 celebration picnic to notice anything below the glitter layer. I still updated the dashboards, still logged the renewals, still handled the vendor calls she forgot to show up for. But now I had something else, perspective, proof that I wasn't crazy for feeling used, that I was good at this, that the people at the top weren't gods, they were just louder. Harper did, eventually, start sniffing around, asking odd questions in meetings, wondering out loud why I wasn't more jazzed about the company vision. HR asked me to confirm my role clarity and to update my LinkedIn to reflect internal branding guidelines. Cute. They thought the risk was public perception. It wasn't. The real risk was that somewhere along the way, they gave me real power. They just didn't realize it came with keys. And they definitely weren't ready for what those keys unlocked. Started with a Slack message at 4:13 p.m. on a Friday, classic corporate booby trap timing. "Hey Karen, quick favor," Harper wrote, as if she hadn't spent the past month treating me like the janitor of expired spreadsheets. "Legal wants someone to clean up vendor stuff, and you're just like, suo good at the gritty deets grinning flex sparkles." The attached file was titled Compliance Renewal Cleanup Final V27. XLSX, which told me everything I needed to know about how many hands had already fumbled this football. I opened it and audibly groaned. Expired licenses, misaligned billing cycles, auto-renewals with no off-ramps. Some contracts hadn't been touched in 2 fiscal years. One vendor was still billing us for a discontinued product and charging late fees. It was like a landfill made of dotted lines and per our last emails. I rolled up my sleeves and got to work, not because Harper asked. Not for glory. I did it because if I didn't, we'd be locked out of half our services during quarter end. And guess who'd get blamed? 2 days later, I had it organized. Every contract tracked, every vendor mapped, every renewal date color-coded like a high-stakes wedding planner's nightmare. When I presented it to legal, they looked at me like I'd parted the Red Sea with a highlighter. One of them, Marla, sharp woman, overworked, probably the only person in the company who could spot a clause in a blackout, pulled me aside. "This is impressive," she said. "We're revamping our renewal workflows. Right now it's too messy, too many cooks. Would you be comfortable being the default signatory for vendor renewals? Just for this cycle." I blinked. Slowly. "You mean I'd be the only one who can approve? For vendor renewals, yeah, speeds up legal's queue, cuts the red tape." The CFO already signed off. She handed me a thin folder with a single page. Authorization memo, renewal signatory protocol, effective immediately. One signature line. Mine. I smiled, because no one else even noticed it had happened. No one in legal thought twice. Karen's got this. No one in ops blinked. Karen always handles the boring stuff. And Harper, who was too busy printing compliance queen stickers for her water bottle, to read the internal update that officially listed me as the named renewal officer for all active vendor contracts. It was beautiful, invisible power. The best kind. With that access, I didn't just clean the mess, I rebuilt the damn kitchen. I rewrote the renewal cycles to stagger across strategic weeks. No more end-of-quarter pileups. No more last-minute scrambles. Each renewal now required my dual auth key. Two-factor authentication routed through a secure device only I held. Everything logged. Everything time-stamped. Everything documented so tightly, even legal couldn't find a loophole. I introduced tiered escalation. If a contract lapsed, it wouldn't just auto-renew, it would expire, triggering alerts, triggering review, triggering panic if necessary. And guess who wrote the override clause? That's right. Override authorization may only be granted by original signatory or with express written consent logged in the primary protocol ledger. Me, it was me. I wasn't doing anything unethical. I wasn't hiding it. Every clause was in plain text, every signature approved, every access granted by people too lazy or distracted to realize what they were handing me. Because I didn't take the power. They gave it to me. And I just made sure it stayed clean, controlled, locked down tight. Somewhere in the background, Harper was hosting a quarterly reflections bonfire and asking people to write their work dreams on note cards and throw them into a decorative pit in the parking lot. I stayed in the office, quietly, logging one final contract, the licensing platform, our digital spine. The one system that tied everything else together, workflow automation, contract execution, cloud infrastructure. And with a few keystrokes, became the sole renewal authority on that too. I leaned back in my chair. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt calm, not vindicated, not cocky, just clear. They wanted to pretend I didn't matter, wanted me invisible, silent. Fine, let them. I'd been underestimated for so long, I'd learned to make silence my fortress. My compliance files were now vaults. My keys, singular, non-transferable. Every digital path back to stability, and straight through me. And if they ever tried to cut me loose, well, let's just say the road back would be paved in paperwork, and I own the pen. It started with one of those too casual questions, the kind that tries to smile while it slits your throat. "So Karen," Harper chirped during a Tuesday sync meeting, twirling a pink gel pen like she was hosting a middle school talent show. "Just wondering, what exactly do you do after 5 p.m.? Like off hours." Zoom grid was silent. A couple of people blinked. One of the interns scratched his neck and looked anywhere but the screen. I smiled politely. "I make dinner. Sometimes I read. Why?" Harper giggled in that way only people with zero self-awareness do. "Oh, nothing, just curious. Gotta make sure everyone's energy is aligned, right?" She did a little sparkle finger wiggle like that explained anything. But I knew what it was. The opening jab, the sniff of blood. Later that afternoon, HR pinged me with a quick housekeeping ask for my detailed work hours, broken down by project, along with all recent vacation day approvals, even though I hadn't taken any days off since February. It was framed like a casual check-in, but the subtext was carved in bold letters. "We're looking for a crack to wedge open." Then it got worse. I was refilling my mug at the office coffee machine when I heard it, whispers from the corridor near IT. "Just flag her sessions," someone said. "Log times, endpoint access, any off-hour spikes." It was Brendan from security, talking to one of the IT analysts, not realizing I was 10 feet away behind the server room door. I waited, silent, invisible, just like they preferred me. When they walked past, I smiled. "Afternoon, boys." They froze like I'd caught them lighting a fuse. I didn't say another word, just kept walking. Later that week, I received a calendar invite. No subject, no context, just a 15-minute block with HR, and a junior compliance liaison named Drew who'd been hired 2 weeks prior and still thought SAW was a kind of accounting software. When I joined, the screen blinked twice before they started recording. "Hi, Karen, we just wanted to clarify a few things regarding your role," Drew said, clearly reading from a script. They asked about my LinkedIn headline. Had recently updated it to include freelance compliance advisor. Not with company details. Not even hinting at who I worked with. Just a line. Accurate. Legal. "That's confusing," Drew said. "To whom?" I asked. They didn't answer. A few hours later, I got an anonymous email sent to my work inbox from a throwaway Gmail account. No message body. Just a screenshot of my LinkedIn page with nice freelance gigs scribbled across it in red Comic Sans. It didn't scare me, but it confirmed what I already knew. The walls were whispering. Someone had figured out I wasn't entirely theirs anymore, and that someone was trying to pull the pin without leaving fingerprints. Harper, suddenly concerned with transparency, began calling out my deliverables in meetings, tasks I'd already finished, logged, and sent receipts for. "Karen, did you get a chance to finalize the Miro audit?" She'd ask sweetly, even though I'd sent the report 2 days earlier. "Just checking, because we're all trying to stay on the same page, right?" I didn't argue. I started printing everything. I built a folder, a real one, red, thick, hard copy. I called it the binder. Every memo, every sign-off, every renewal approval tied to my credentials. I even printed the IT logs that showed when Brendan tried to ping my machine at 1:27 a.m. For maintenance. When I say I cataloged everything, I mean everything. I had screenshots of Slack messages, calendar changes, email headers. I even downloaded the audio from that weird HR meeting because a friend in legal once told me, when the piano falls, make sure you're holding the insurance policy. One afternoon, I watched Harper whisper something to the VP of operations while pointing at me like I was a water cooler that had started leaking. The next morning, my admin dashboard password was accidentally reset, and 2 minor vendors were reassigned without explanation. That's when I knew they weren't just poking anymore. They were prepping a takedown, hoping I'd crack, hoping I'd react, hoping I'd trip over some policy just enough for them to boot me out quietly and blame it all on a misunderstanding. But here's the thing. You can't ambush someone who already lives in the shadows. I'd seen this playbook before, just never directed at me. I didn't panic. I didn't run to legal. I just turned the page and logged it all. Because they forgot something crucial. I wasn't trying to win their game. I was writing my own. It happened on a Wednesday. Always a Wednesday. The day they pick when they want it to feel like just another hiccup in your week, something you can shrug off over leftovers and a sad glass of boxed wine. Not dramatic enough for a Monday firing, not final enough for a Friday walkout. No, they wanted plausible deniability. A surgical extraction, middle of the week, no scene. "Hey Karen, quick thing, can you pop by conference B at 3? The HR message read, no subject, no agenda. Just that flat, artificial sweetness they use when they're about to gut you with a plastic spoon. I knew. I packed my bag first. Quietly. Notebook, charger, the binder. I even wiped down my desk, because I'm a professional, and because I knew I wouldn't be back. Not unless I chose to be. Conference B had that distinct smell of betrayal and coffee breath. 2 chairs on one side, one for me. The CFO was already seated, thumbing through a packet like he'd just skimmed the instructions for microwave and decided he knew better anyway. HR, Amanda, eternally nervous, always with the empathy eyes, offered a tight smile. "Thanks for joining us," he said like I had a damn choice. "Karen," the CFO began, not looking up, "we've recently become aware of an external consulting engagement you've undertaken." He said it like it was a bomb I left under his Tesla. Like I'd personally insulted his kids' private school tuition by daring to use my brain somewhere else. "We've reviewed your contract." Amanda jumped in. "And while we appreciate your contributions here, this represents a clear ethics violation. Will employment without disclosure breaches our internal code." There it was. The hammer drop, soft-voiced, sanitized, but a hammer nonetheless. I nodded, didn't speak. Just reached into my bag, pulled out a heavy sealed envelope and slid it across the table. Amanda blinked. The CFO looked at it like it might hiss. "What's this?" he asked, half suspicious, half annoyed. "Documentation," I said. "You'll want to read it carefully." I didn't stay for the reaction. Just stood, straightened my blazer, picked up my bag, looked Amanda dead in the eyes and said, "You'll want to make a copy for legal." And then I walked out. No dramatics, no raised voices, just the slow, deliberate silence of a chess player moving her queen off the board because she already knows the next 5 moves are all checkmate. Inside the envelope, a notarized letter dated 3 months ago, signed by the CFO himself, though he clearly didn't remember doing it, authorizing me as the sole renewal signatory for all vendor contracts tied to our operational core. Not default, sole, with full digital authority and a non-transferable clause. There were also 2 audit logs from our compliance platform confirming that every single renewal, licensing, infrastructure, documentation storage had been executed under my 2 FA keys. The language in the letter included the phrase originator required for override, which I had gently helped legal include when the process was being restructured to streamline vendor dependencies. And just for good measure, the envelope contained a timestamped screenshot of my own calendar showing the meeting with legal, the email thread with the CFO's approval, and the final signed PDF on company letterhead. All zipped up in a neat little timeline, kind of thing you only collect when you know someone's going to throw you under a bus and then ask you to help change the tire. I exited through the side stairwell, not because I was ashamed, but because I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of watching. They wanted the drama of an outburst, the gossip fuel. Did you hear Karen lost it? She was crying in the elevator. I always knew she'd crack. Nope. I drove home in silence, kind of silence that wraps around you like armor. The kind that knows you've already won, just not loudly. That evening, I opened a bottle of wine, not fancy, just good enough. I didn't check my work email, didn't check LinkedIn. I watched the sun sink behind my neighbor's rusted trampoline and felt something I hadn't in months, control. Because in a few hours, someone was going to try to renew a license. And the system was going to ask for one thing, signature. At 7:16 a.m., the first ping failed. It was a low-priority vendor, some back-end invoicing API that usually just worked unless someone sneezed near the firewall. IT assumed it was a hiccup, restarted the service, and moved on. At 7:34 a.m., the main licensing gateway threw a 403 error during routine sync. Unauthorized request. Signature mismatch. That got flagged. Tickets opened. Slack lit up. By 8:05, finance was in full tailspin. Their weekly report dashboard gone. Access to the invoice automation suite denied. The CFO's executive reporting tool access expired. Renewal required. That's when they called IT, thinking it was a credentials issue. Password resets, system flushes, even a local reinstallation. Nothing worked. The logs all said the same thing: authorization required, signatory mismatch. In a tiny, glowing red banner across every vendor portal, invalid signatory, they escalated. By 8:42 a.m., the head of IT looped in the CTO. They ran a full audit. Every single renewal path pointed to the same user key. One name, one ID, one unbroken chain of authorization going back 5 months. Karen M. Willis. All requests for override were met with rejection. Why? Because the system wasn't broken. It was working exactly as designed. Override clause, buried in the renewal protocol, read: sole authorization is non-transferable without written consent from originator. Escalation available only through primary credential keyholder. The originator, Karen, the keyholder. Karen, the written consent, not present. The CFO, half-dressed with his tie draped around his neck like a noose, tore open the envelope Karen had left behind the day before. He skimmed past the first page and flipped through the attached copies. Vendor logs, audit trails, Marla's legal sign-off, his own signature. There it was in bold, effective date. Karen Willis shall serve as sole renewal officer for all vendor agreements with full administrative rights and rollback prevention protocols enabled by default. His own pen, his own name. He had signed the clause 6 weeks ago, during an off-site finance review where legal had asked for process streamlining. Hadn't read it, he never read it. By 9:13 a.m., half the company's back-end stack was grayed out. Document signing system, disabled. Vendor credential vault, time-locked, cloud resource scheduler, hung up in expired queue purgatory. They tried calling Karen's office line. Disconnected. They tried Slack. No response. Profile photo gone. They pinged her personal number voicemail. You've reached Karen. If this is about renewals, please contact someone who didn't fire me. At 9:26 a.m., the CTO slammed his fist on the boardroom table and barked, just override it. The lead sysadmin replied, pale, we can't. She was the root credential for the renewal platform. Her ID's tied to the encryption keys. It has to come from her. Can't we roll it back? The CFO hissed. No, the sysadmin muttered. She activated rollback prevention. She wrote the clause. Silence. Then, okay, fine. Just buy us a new license, fresh contract, new keys. Already tried, legal whispered, holding her phone like it might bite her. The vendors won't issue until we resolve the lapse. Our account is frozen due to contractual dependency on named signatory. It's in the SLA. The CFO looked like he'd aged 5 years in a minute. He reopened the envelope, flipping frantically to the signature block. There it was. And all vendor renewals executed solely by the named officer shall be considered bound exclusively to that officer's active credentials. Expiration of those credentials without formal transfer shall result in account suspension until proper authorization is reestablished. Translation: if Karen walked, the contract stalled. If the contract stalled, the system stalled. And Karen was unreachable. At 9:43 a.m., the founder called an emergency meeting. By 9:57, Harper was crying in a phone booth on the 3rd floor. At 10:05, someone from Investor Relations muttered, "Can we sue her?" Legal didn't even look up. Sue her for what? Doing her job better than any of us. Karen, meanwhile, was at home, still in pajamas, watching reruns of Columbo and sipping coffee from her world's most tired professional mug. Her phone was turned face down, her inbox set to filter anything from at company name com into a folder called regrets. Because here's the thing no one in that boardroom had learned. You don't get to erase someone while they're holding the only pen. The conference room reeked of panic and recycled AC. Legal had gathered in full force, laptops open, jackets off, eyes sunken. Screens flashed with audit logs, dashboards blinking yellow and red like a dying heart monitor. CTO paced like a rat in a cage, mumbling about infrastructure backdoors and API workarounds. The lead counsel, Marla, just stared at her screen with the grim expression of someone who knew the body had flatlined, but hadn't been given permission to call time of death. They tried everything. Override requests, denied. Root access resets, blocked. Backup credential provisioning, disabled by the renewal protocols Karen had authored. Even attempted to spoof the system logs, some last-ditch Hail Mary to trick the platform into accepting a dummy credential, but the compliance pipeline flagged it instantly and locked out 3 more users. The screen read in bold, "Unauthorized override attempt. Escalation reported." That line set off a fresh round of yelling. "The logs are clean," someone finally whispered. "What do you mean clean?" barked the founder, finally gracing the room with his khaki-wrapped presence. Smartwatch beeped an unreadable metric while he glared across the table like a man who just realized his yacht might be repossessed. "I mean," Marla said, voice flat, "they're airtight. Every contract, every renewal, every vendor agreement over the last 4 months, all signed, sealed, and executed by a single credential. Whose?" She didn't even look up. Karen Willis. A silence rippled through the room like a slow-motion car crash. Then, murmurs. Disbelief. Shuffling papers, flipping tabs, rereading the same sentence 20 times hoping the words would change. "No, no," the founder said, waving his hand like he could swat reality away. "There's no way she had sole authority. That's a security flaw. That's Clause 14, Marla interrupted, scrolling slowly. Signed by you, by the way, during the compliance restructure in Q1. The memo, titled Reduce Friction on Vendor Pathways. His mouth twitched. Meant default approvals, not this. Who drafted that clause? Marla gave him a look like she was deciding whether or not to tell him he'd been tricked by the help. She did. With my oversight. It was legally airtight. You approved it, CFO signed off, and no one questioned it because she was Karen. Quiet, reliable, paperwork Karen. The founder turned toward the CFO, who looked like he was seconds from projectile vomiting. Made her the only signatory. I thought it was temporary, the CFO barked. Legal said it was for audit season. Marla corrected him without blinking. We said it was for streamlining authority during audit season. You made it permanent with your signature. There was no expiration clause. The founder's face shifted through 5 stages of grief in about 3 seconds, finally landing on rage. You gave her that kind of control? She's a middle manager. No, Marla said coolly, she was your named officer. The clause uses that language explicitly. Every renewal bears her key. Every access log routes through her ID. You made her the only gatekeeper to the entire vendor spine of this company. And then came the kicker. Why didn't we know? The founder hissed. We did know, Marla replied. You just didn't care. You gave her the reins because she was quiet and competent and wouldn't screw it up. And she didn't, till you tried to cut her out. At that exact moment, Karen was at home, watching the rain tick softly against her window. Her cat, a lumpy tabby named Spreadsheet, sat curled on the windowsill, oblivious. Karen refreshed her inbox out of habit. Another dozen emails had trickled in. Legal, CFO. One from Harper with the subject line, "We should talk," pleading face, deleted immediately. She sipped her coffee, opened the system logs remotely because, yes, still had full access, and watched the dashboard flicker in real time. Unauthorized attempts, lockdown escalations, internal user suspensions triggered by compliance violations. The machine was eating itself trying to solve a problem it couldn't override. Karen didn't smile, not exactly, but her eyes narrowed just slightly at the line that read, "Executive override attempt blocked. Originator consent required." She leaned back in her chair. Glow of the screen reflected off the framed copy of her termination letter hanging behind her, right next to the audit memo bearing the founder's scrawled, half-legible signature. Control didn't always look like a corner office or a six-figure bonus. Sometimes it looked like silence, documentation, patience, and one little clause no one bothered to read. The message came in at 2:17 a.m., not from HR, not from legal, not even from the red-faced CFO whose signature still adorned the authorization memo that started this slow-motion implosion. It came from a board member. Subject line, "Urgent request for discussion." The email was brief, respectful, not panicked, which Karen found amusing, like using formal cutlery while the house burned around you. It asked if she would be willing to open a line of communication. Just talk. Karen let it sit unread for an hour, not to be cruel, just to remind them that her time, like her signature, was no longer theirs to summon at will. When she did reply, it was a single sentence. "I'll consider reopening terms. Please find attached my conditions." The attachment, a clean PDF watermarked, professionally formatted, titled Consulting Terms, Emergency Renewal Assistance, Karen M. Willis, Independent Officer. It was a masterclass in cold, surgical leverage. Rate, triple her former salary. Billed in advance, non-refundable. Scope, temporary consulting role, limited solely to renewal stabilization. No meetings, no strategy, no team realignment lunches. Delivery, all work to be performed remotely. No office visits, no Zooms, all communication via written channels for audit purposes. Clauses, the clauses. 1. Indemnity. Full legal protection against any prior action taken by the company against Karen, including but not limited to wrongful termination, defamation, surveillance, and unauthorized data access. 2. Non-disparagement. They would issue a formal apology on letterhead, acknowledging her pivotal role in sustaining operational continuity, and publicly retract any claims of ethics violations. 3. Termination. Either party could end the contract, but only after a 7-day fulfillment window, ensuring Karen wouldn't be tossed aside the second the lights came back on. 4. Exclusivity. For the duration of the engagement, Karen would not accept competing contracts with similar vendors or companies, unless the firm failed to meet any of the payment milestones. She had even included bank routing info. In bold, no room for ambiguity. The board member replied within 40 minutes, reviewed, "Will escalate to full board immediately." "Thank you, Karen." Karen didn't reply. She simply lit a candle on her desk, not for ambience, but because she liked the symbolism of fire, contained, controlled, directed, the opposite of what the company had become in her absence. Around 9:00 a.m., her phone buzzed. Not a call, a notification. Wire transfer received, $118,500 and 0 cents USD. She nodded to herself and turned to her second monitor. Her inbox was already filling with new pings. Access credentials, temporary admin authorizations, sysadmin escalations were routed to her consulting alias. She didn't rush. Instead, she took the time to reread the apology letter. It had arrived from legal, signed by the founder and co-signed by the CFO. Polite, stilted, clearly reviewed by a dozen terrified hands. It began, "On behalf of the executive team, acknowledge the critical role Miss Karen Willis has played in the continued operational success of our firm." She snorted at acknowledge. Not apologize, of course. These people couldn't say sorry if you tattooed the word on their eyelids. But that was fine. It was legally sufficient. She filed the letter, flagged the wire receipt, and opened the renewal dashboard. The interface blinked awake like a machine exhaling after a long coma. Dozens of failed contracts lined the screen like broken teeth. Most were nearing their final grace period. She didn't touch them, not yet. First, she enabled a new credential key, her key tied to her LLC, not her old employee ID. She routed the access logs to a private ledger, set alert triggers, disabled any backdoor admin escalations that had been clumsily created during their flailing. Then she opened the first vendor portal. A single click. Renewed. Another renewed. Each one clicked back to life like power returning to a blackout city, and with each renewal, Karen felt nothing. Not pride, not revenge, just completion, precision. One checkbox at a time. By noon, the company's operational systems were back online. Harper sent a welcome back. Message in Slack, complete with a sunflower emoji and a gif of opera saying, "You get a second chance." Karen archived it. Then she muted the Slack workspace. It wasn't back. She was billing. The board call started late, because of course it did. Half the executive team couldn't get into the conferencing software without IT manually bypassing expired licenses. A few were dialing in from borrowed accounts, their real ones still suspended. Someone's screen name appeared as Karen Recovery Session 1 by mistake, and no one had the guts to laugh. Then she appeared. Karen's face lit up the screen, perfectly centered, no blur filter, no fake background. Just her, framed by a clean white wall. A single bookshelf, a steaming cup of tea, and directly behind her, deliberate, unmoving, hung the sealed envelope she'd left behind on termination day, now mounted in a shadow box. Right next to it, a crisp, framed copy of her dismissal letter, complete with the CFO's digital signature in the top right corner. She didn't say hello, didn't thank them for the invite. She just opened a folder, clicked once, and shared her screen. The dashboard populated instantly, every expired renewal blinking in a tidy grid. Red, red, red. Column after column of authorization lapsed. Karen cleared her throat. Calm, precise. Per clause 6.2 of the signed vendor compliance agreement, she said, her voice steady, emotionless. Renewals lapse permanently after 72 hours of non-action, unless activated by originator credentials. She glanced at the digital clock in the corner of the screen. That leaves you 58 minutes. Silence. The founder was mid-sentence, some half-formed grovel disguised as a strategy pivot, but the CFO was already moving. Karen watched him fumble through two-factor prompts like a man trying to defuse a bomb with oven mitts. He waved someone over, started muttering about the payment token, the routing number, the emergency account. Payments en route, he barked. How can we? I'll confirm when it clears, Karen interrupted. Not cold, just factual. Legal leaned in from off-screen. We've finalized the public letter of acknowledgement, Karen, per your terms. Do you want a review again? She tapped a key. The document opened on screen, neatly formatted, triple signed, dated, time-stamped. I've already seen it, she said. She clicked. An encrypted key file appeared. No ceremony, no music cue, just a blinking cursor and a download link labeled Primary Renewal Credential Final. Karen didn't say anything else. She let them sit in the silence of their own making, blinking at the one thing they could no longer buy, bully, or bluff into submission. Then she smiled once briefly and ended the call. Back in her home office, the tea was still warm. She leaned back in her chair, eyes half-lidded, watching as her inbox lit up like a Christmas tree. 3 new emails. First, a formal offer from a rival firm, larger, global, with a note from the CTO that simply reads, "Saw your work. Let's talk." The second, an invitation from a board member at her former company. Separate domain, personal account. If you're ever interested in a seat at the table instead of building it for someone else. The third, no name. Just the subject line, "We saw what you did. We need someone like you." She didn't open any of them. Not yet. Instead, she glanced up at the envelope on the wall, her quiet little kill shot, and the termination letter beside it, the one that had tried to erase her name from the system she built. She lifted her cup, exhaled once through her nose, and took a slow sip of tea. Her phone buzzed again. She didn't look. Not yet, because all she could hear was that final line echoing in her head, the one they'd never see on any dashboard or clause. Turns out I was working 2 jobs. Yours just paid less. You're the real stars of the corporate jungle. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, or I'll flick the switch on your old cubicle memories.